All it takes to create a sculpture is a lump of material, something to shape that material with, and a skilled hand. Getting hold of the material wouldn't be a problem for most of us, but very few of us have the skilled hand that the craft requires. Fortunately, some people do, and they created each and every one of the incredible sculptures you're about to see in this video. In 2014, a television show was launched in Croatia with a very specific aim: to find someone worthy of creating the Gordon Lederer Memorial, a special monument to the Croatian photographers and cameramen who died in the line of fire during the war that raged through the country during the 1990s. The winner of that TV contest was the architect and sculptor Petar Barisic, who came up with a concept called Broken Landscape. It's a steel circle containing a broken pane of glass, and now stands on Shakur Hill at the highest point of Una River Valley. According to Petar, the shape is representative of the lens of a camera, pierced by a sniper's bullet. The path to the monument is made of slabs of concrete in black steel frames, designed to resemble a reel of film frames. The lens looks out over the valley in the exact position where Lederer is thought to have taken the final few photographs of his life. It's a simple yet poignant memorial, and you don't have to be Croatian to appreciate the beauty of it. The memorial that was unveiled in Croatia 2014 was well received by critics. The one that was unveiled in the port of Beirut in Lebanon in August 2021 didn't go down quite so well. It's fair to say that the sculpture split the crowd. At least some of the controversy can be put down to the fact that the sculpture is made from materials left over from a bomb blast at the port the previous summer. The vaguely humanoid sculpture is the work of the Lebanese artist and architect Nadim Karam, who lives in Beirut, and was motivated by a desire to pay tribute to the victims of the explosion and their families. He's called it the gesture, and says it's a giant made from the ashes and scars of the city and the people affected by the tragedy. Rather than being paid for by the government, the creation and installation of the artwork were paid for by a network of private businesses. That was another aspect of the project that displeased some of the critics. None of the criticism was directed at the quality of Nadim's work, though, which is clearly outstanding. In 2013, Spencer Biles spent a whole year creating artwork in a French forest. He didn't advertise his work, nor did he tell many people what he was doing. When people come across it, it's mostly by accident. That only makes the experience of finding it all the more wonderful. If you want to find it yourself, you'll find it in the woods close to Loch, a small village not far from Ness. There are 40 sculptures made by Biles in the woods, all of which are made from materials he found in the natural environment. Biles isn't French, but the French woods seems to inspire him more than the woods of any other country. He's created similar structures in Loch, Mougins, and Villeneuve in the past as part of a project he calls Paper Landscapes. If you like the look of these sculptures and think they're worth seeing with your own eyes, you're running out of time. The artist designs his work to gradually deteriorate over time, and after 9 years there might not be much of them left. Biles is far from the only artist of the 21st century who's built their reputation working with natural materials. Andy Goldsworthy has done the same thing. He's a landscape artist, and his work was recently recorded for posterity in a documentary called Leaning into the Wind. The British-born artist's work wears a little harder than that of Biles. He chisels passageways into rock and wraps wood around stone to create angular sculptures that could last for centuries. One of his most famous works is Passage, which was made mostly from granite between 2014 and 2015, and looks almost like a railway line running through a forest. He sometimes allows his creations to be taken indoors and exhibited to the general public, as has been the case with Stone C, which is now at the St. Louis Art Museum. Not everything Goldsworthy makes is quite as permanent as Stone C or Passage. He once laid down on the pavement in the rain just so he could take a picture of the dry patch he created on the pavement. But documentaries like Leaning into the Wind ensure that even the most fleeting of his work has been captured for posterity. Who's got the big nose in Cleveland? That might sound like a rude question, but it's everywhere in 2021 and might yet show up again in 2022. We're not talking about a nose on somebody's face, but a giant nose that's been photographed in several locations across Cleveland, Ohio, USA. It was first spotted at Hart Crane Park on March 3rd, where it prompted widespread curiosity. People who inspected it up close noted that the nose is around 8 feet tall but surprisingly light. Nobody seems to be able to identify the substance it's made from. A few days later, the same nose was seen outside Carl Stokes U.S. Courthouse. An eagle-eyed TV viewer then spotted it weeks later in the background of coverage of the Parade the Circle event. What's the purpose of the nose? Is it a political statement of some kind? Is it a reminder to all of us that sometimes we have to take time to smell the roses? On the other hand, is it just a giant nose that's been made by someone with a strange sense of humor? Unless the artist comes forward, which seems unlikely, we'll probably never know. Statues of Jesus Christ are 10 a penny. You'll find at least one in most Christian places of worship all over the world. Most of them aren't underwater, but we know of one that is. It's Christ of the Abyss, and it's in John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park in Key Largo, Florida, USA. That's where it's been since August 1965, when the 9-foot-tall statue was lowered into the waters deliberately. It's actually the third statue made from the same mold. The first was dropped into the Mediterranean Sea in August 1954, and the second went into the water off the coast of Grenada 7 years later. In each case, the bronze statues were created by the Italian artist Guido Galletti, based on an idea from a diver called Duilio Marcante. The diver wanted to create a permanent memorial for all his colleagues who'd lost their lives at sea, and Galletti was the perfect man for the job. In the case of the statue in Florida, it was given to the Underwater Society of America. These days, its original meaning has largely been forgotten, and it's become a popular selfie spot for scuba divers. Rumors of a gang of Satan worshippers holding ceremonies in the woods began to spread when this bizarre sculpture turned up in a park in Toronto, Canada in December 2020. Looking at it, we're not surprised. It's a truly horrific sight. As best as we can tell, we think it's intended to be a female figure with demonic horns, carrying 2 lanterns for unknown reasons. There was once a circle of stones in this forested area of High Park known as the Witch's Circle, and some local residents wondered if the new sculpture might be related. Other residents, presumably the younger residents, noted that their new landmark looked a little like something from the sci-fi horror show Stranger Things. The artist eventually identified themselves to a local paper using only the initials MA, and said they wanted their work to be viewed as guerrilla art. They also noted that it was originally a male figure, and only looks female now because someone vandalized it. Within a few days of its appearance, somebody added an offering jar to one of its arms, so even if it wasn't being worshipped before, it might be happening now. Sometimes things can go wrong for an artist even when they have the best of intentions. A sculpture that spends its entire life outdoors is inevitably going to suffer the effects of weathering eventually. When that happens, someone has to come along to perform repair and restoration work. There's no guarantee that their efforts will improve the appearance of the sculpture, though. Just look at this poor statue in Palencia, Spain. By the time a restoration worker had finished with it in November 2020, onlookers compared its distorted appearance to the face of former American President Donald Trump. Other people thought it looked like a Tusken Raider from Star Wars. The female sculpture used to have a happy, smiling face, but the face has been completely blasted away and replaced by holes to represent the eyes and mouth and a misshapen lump for a nose. Julia Betancourt, a Spanish professional restoration artist, says things like this are happening all over her country because the institutions that own the sculptures don't want to pay for a professional to come and do the work. The Loch Ness Monster is famously Scottish. It's also famously fictional, which makes its appearance in a small town in Australia all the more unlikely. Nevertheless, here's the Nessie of Portland, southwest Victoria. It made its first appearance in June 2021. As you can see, it isn't a real monster, but then again, neither is Nessie. It's a sculpture, mostly made from steel and old tires. Residents of the town say that the sculpture appeared overnight during a lockdown, and nobody knows who put it there. The person responsible is unlikely to come forward because they must have broken lockdown conditions to complete their work. The Australian Nessie spends most of its time below the waterline, but if you catch it at the right time of day when the tide is low, you can see its rubbery body. The head remains above the water at all times. The local council seemed to see the funny side, putting out a statement to announce that a Scottish escapee had managed to reach their town despite international borders being closed, and going on to note that they hoped their visitor would settle down and stay for the long term. So much has happened since November 2020 that it already feels like a very long time ago. For that reason, you might have forgotten about the metal monolith that turned up in the Red Desert of Utah and captured the attention of the whole world. While it initially seemed like the monolith had appeared overnight, a subsequent examination of Google Maps proved that it had been standing since at least October 2016. As soon as it was noticed, it disappeared again before eventually ending up in the hands of the U.S. Bureau of Land Management. The mystery surrounding the Utah monolith prompted literally hundreds of copycats, with several other U.S. states and many European and South American nations eventually getting monoliths of their own. None of the copycats attracted as much attention as the original. The origins and initial purpose of the monolith remain unknown. All we know for sure is that it was smooth, well-made, 12 feet tall, and made of a material that kept its shine despite 4 years in the desert. There have been suggestions that it might have been erected by John McCracken, a minimalist conceptual artist who once lived in the area, but the deceased artist's family think it's unlikely. Is there something funny about this pyramid? Well, perhaps there should be, because it's called Pyramide des Ha-Ha. The name is an extremely unlikely one for a monument that was created as a lasting tribute to those lost in a tragic flood in Saguenay, Quebec in 1996. The river flooded that year and claimed the lives of 10 people, while simultaneously inflicting roughly $1 billion worth of damage to the surrounding area. To understand why the pyramid is called Ha-Ha, we have to understand a little about the French language. The French word Ha-Ha means unexpected obstacle. To hammer home the obstacle theme, the pyramid is made of 3,000 triangular road signs designed to indicate hazards. There's nothing inside the pyramid except a staircase, which visitors are welcome to climb to the top of and enjoy a view across the river. The artist who made the pyramid would presumably have been aware that its name would sound strange to English speakers, but they stuck to their vision and trusted that people would take the time to learn its true meaning. We started this video with a memorial, and that's how we're going to finish it. We're also returning to a place close to our starting location of Croatia. We're in Serbia, and we're looking at the sculptures that make up the Bubanj Memorial Park. The site was the staging point for one of the single largest mass executions of the Second World War. More than 10,000 Serbs who were taken prisoner by German invaders were marched to this point and then shot. Most of them were residents of Ness, which is where the park stands today. The 5 marble sculptures at the center of the park are intended to symbolize the progression of the war in Serbia, starting with the oppression of the Serbs and moving on to Serbian resistance before the eventual defeat of the occupying forces. Away from the sculptures, there are also smaller monuments and memorial trails. The entire area is thought of as hallowed ground, and there are rarely many people in the park, even on the warmest days of the year. It can be a stark and somber place, but then again, it could hardly be expected to be anything else.
Subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification bell, and enjoy watching new videos on my channel. Thanks for watching, and see you soon!